This video will be about how daytime migratory birds use magnetic fields from the Earth to navigate. This topic has been of interest to me since I was a child and heard this extremely simplified explanation of bird migration. Birds have compasses in their heads. Here, I will explore the rest of the story. In 1978, Klaus Scholten was super excited by a recent finding that radical pairs could be affected by weak magnetic fields. From there, he made a leap and tried to provide a reaction mechanism for a chemical compass in species that could change their orientation in response to geomagnetic fields. To start, let's define a radical pair. A radical is a molecule with an odd number of electrons that has a singular lone electron instead of a lone pair. A radical pair is two of those radicals that were created simultaneously by some input of energy such that they are essentially one unit. Each lone electron in this radical pair has a spin state, up or down. Normally, a magnetic field would not be strong enough to alter chemical reactions, but here the radical pair intermediate is in an unstable, non-equilibrium state. This figure is an analogy for the reaction mechanism. A bump from a fly wouldn't normally be strong enough to tip a heavy block over, but when the block is balanced in an unstable way, a small nudge could make a difference and push it onto its side. This is the concept of how magnetic fields can affect free radicals. Now, what does this nudge from the magnetic field look like? For that, we turn to the Zeeman effect. The Zeeman effect is when a single energy level for an electron is split into multiple energy levels when a magnetic field is applied. An electron is essentially a microscopic magnet in that it has magnetic moment and interacts with both the magnetic field and the nucleus of each atom. In the figure, hyperfine interactions are those interactions causing splits in the energy levels for each electron. The number of energy levels it is split into depends on the angular momentum quantum number. The angular momentum quantum number depends on the principal quantum number. Look at principal quantum number 2. For this, there are two possible angular momentum quantum numbers. For angular momentum quantum number 1, there are three different magnetic quantum numbers, -1, 0, and 1, and each of those corresponds to a spin state when the energy levels are split. Each magnetic quantum number is represented by an arrow in this figure. The result is what is called a triplet or split state and a singlet or unsplit state. The magnetic field causes an oscillation between these two states. This reaction must somehow be taking place in migratory animals, and therefore there must be some way for them to sense how much product is being formed and therefore the properties of the geomagnetic field. This figure shows how when the animal is aligned in such a way that it is parallel to the magnetic field, the field has a larger effect and more of the radical pairs are nudged to become products. When the animal is aligned perpendicular to the field, the magnetic field interacts to a lesser degree, so there are more radical pairs that revert to reactants. Scientists have predicted for a while that birds navigate using magnetic fields, but a study in 2014 with European robins, a known migratory species, firmly established this. They found that while they were exposed to background electromagnetic noise, they lost their ability to navigate. In order to form radical pairs, there needs to be an input of energy. Since we are investigating daytime migratory birds, we will look at light for that input. A 1993 study with silverise, an Australian seasonally migratory bird, found that when the birds were exposed to light levels resembling those found in different seasons, they oriented themselves in the appropriate migratory direction for that season. So, not only can light power the formation of radical pairs, but it also does so in such a way that it changes the product ratio after the magnetic field interacts with the free radicals depending on light levels. One type of protein that uses light is cryptochromes, a class of flavoproteins in the eyes of animals, including birds, that synchronize circadian rhythms with environmental light-dark cycles. In a study published in 2012 by Columbia University, it was found that tryptophan radical pairs in cryptochrome are magnetically sensitive, making the cryptochrome proteins a strong contender for the geomagnetic navigation center. Once a protein candidate had been found, its use during migration had to be proven. A 2018 study was able to look at how the mRNA levels of different cryptochrome transcripts changes during migratory seasons due to upregulation of those genes. The genes Cry1a, Cry1b, Cry2, and Cry4 are different cryptochrome genes found in the eyes of birds. This histogram compares the mRNA expression of those genes during migratory autumn and spring seasons in European robins and chickens. The dotted line at 1.0 on the y-axis labeled relative mRNA expression marks the normal level of gene expression during non-migratory seasons. The chicken mRNA levels are used as a control here since it is a non-migratory bird and should not have seasonal changes in regulations of these genes. The number after GG indicates age and days of the chicken. As can be seen, Cry4 was about 2.2 times upregulated in the European robin, denoted ER, and Cry2 was slightly less upregulated at 1.6 times the normal gene expression. This provides even more evidence that cryptochromes are involved in migratory geomagnetic navigation, particularly Cry4 and Cry2 in the European robin. This project to understand bird migration started in the 1970s and is still worked on by researchers today. It is an endeavor to which so many scientists worldwide and across generations and fields have contributed. The more answers we have, the more questions have been raised in response. And that's just how research works.